How do you sort out the so-called jargon from real-world practices that work? Do the members of your organization find some business or technology advice utterly confusing? Welcome to Real Talk with Sam Holcman. In this program, we set the record straight, and in terms that business people and technology people can understand. Now, here is your host, Sam Holcman.
Welcome to this edition of Real Talk. I'm Sam Holcman. Thanks for joining me on this particular broadcast. And this particular broadcast is sort of a sad note for me, frankly. And it has to do with General Motors and some of the colleagues that are now being affected by things that are going on there. So a bit of very important history, not just for General Motors, but for all of our listeners. And if possible, some chief executive officers and chief information officers that may need to remember some history. So here we go. 1984. General Motors acquired Electronic Data Systems, EDS. And the specific reason for that was to assist General Motors in their technology operations. For whatever reason, they decided to bring in a very large organization, acquire them to, for all intents and purposes, take over all of their software activities, hardware, technology operations, data centers, et cetera, et cetera. 1984. 1996, General Motors spun off Electronic Data Systems, EDS, as an independent company. So they acquired them in 84, spun them off in 96, but had a 10-year relationship with them for not only contractual terms, but if I can use the phrase, sort of a transition that was going on. A gentleman named Ralph Shagunda was General Motors' IT executive. And when the 10-year relationship with Electronic Data Systems, EDS, ended in 2006, Mr. Shagunda put together a massive transformation operation, blueprint, if I can use that phrase. I don't want to use the word architecture, with a $15 billion value attached to it. And that was for multiple outsourcing. Any of this sound familiar now? Multiple outsourcing. And Mr. Shagunda put together a $15 billion program that included very prestigious organizations, third-party outsourcers in technology. IBM, Hewlett-Packard, yes, Electronic Data Systems, EDS, Capgemini, and Wipro. And his statement at the time, paraphrasing of course, was, "I am positive, confident that there'll be massive advantages of this outsourcing solution." Now, let me repeat some dates here. That was 2006. Mid-July 2012. Mid-July 2012. New Chief Information Officer, Randy Mott is what he goes with at that time, announced the following. GM will bring down the outsourced IT scope from 90% outsourced during Mr. Shagunda's activities to 10% by 2015. So talk about a ping-ponging going on here. So now we're at 2015, and what we have here at 2015 is 10% outsourced, 90% insourced. And Mr. Mott argued that this was going to radically improve operations so they wouldn't have to worry about due diligence, procurement, contract negotiations with all of these outsourcers all the time. because a good percentage of the staff, all they were doing was managing contracts. And so this allowed IT to largely be in-house, to allow General Motors to adopt solutions specifically for the car business, manufacturing business, supply chain business, sales channels that were customized to the massive, massive requirements of someone as large as General Motors and the automotive industry. Now, August 2024. General Motors software layoffs could signal a shift in digital transformation strategy. Sorry for the chuckle. It's a nervous chuckle, and it's one that is sad. And what looks like right now is that the focus is, here we go again, outsourcing, as opposed to payrolled workers. And the reason I'm mentioning this is for you CEOs and you CIOs, why would you think that a third party's staff, people, and methodologies for software development are better than your own? Because it's not your core competency? Is that the phrase? Well, it should be, because the automobiles of today are essentially rolling computers. They're mobile computers. And the history of GM is very sad. They had many organizations that they've spun off that were experts in software development. They were one of the first to put telemetry in the automobiles, if you remember OnStar. It was an incredible technology and still essentially has those appendages in a lot of organizations. I don't get it. I want to repeat here. Why would someone think, a CEO or a CIO, that a third party's technology, human beings, and software development practices are better? I can say right now that most of them, whether outsourced or insourced, are still stuck in maturity level 1, which is handcrafting software. That's the issue. It's not who's doing it. It's what methodologies are they following. I call it the annuity software development process. Construct, maintain, maintain, maintain. Construct, maintain, maintain, maintain. Just keep the ball rolling. Just keep the ball rolling. Never land the airplane, so to speak. Just keep it going. Construct, maintain, maintain, maintain. If you want a competitive advantage, it's not where the human being sits. That's the belief. Well, it's not 100% correct. If the human being is inside the company and focusing on the requirements of the stakeholders of the organization, and therefore are loyal to the organization and not a third party that they're loyal to that they get their paychecks from, you're going to be ahead. But you've got to change the software development practices to gain the competitive advantage that's there. So it's a sad time for General Motors and its technology staff. This is not a blame game. This is a thinking broadcast to say perhaps what needs to be looked at is the software development practices, not where they sit, the human beings, and think about the concept of competitive advantage for software as the enabler of General Motors' future. I'm focusing on General Motors because of the impact that they have not only in the community of Detroit and Michigan, but also in the country. But a lot of organizations follow their lead. So perhaps those at GM are possibly listening and thinking about, how do you change the software development practice to gain the competitive advantage? Because best practices that stay in-house stay best practices and become competitive advantages. That's what GM needs to do. For everyone's sake, not only in the Detroit community, but in the technology community in the United States of America, things have got to change. It's not hard. It's just rethinking.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Talk. Be sure to join your host, Sam Holcman, again for another edition of our program. We'll have more real topics of discussion then.